Welcome to the Steady On podcast, where God's hard truth meets your hard story. I'm Angie Bauman, and this is episode 134, Brave Boundaries. And with me today is best-selling author, physician, professor, speaker, and CEO and founder of the Brave Enough organization, Dr. Sasha Shillcutt. Sasha's passion is to guide women down the path of discovering who God created her to be in all her fullness and beauty. And one of the ways she does that is by helping us recognize where we need boundaries in our lives and how to kindly set those boundaries with the people in our lives. One of my favorite and most convicting moments in the interview is when Sasha says, if you don't express your boundaries, you're not living by your priorities. Ouch, right? Asking for what I need is not my strong suit. In truth, recognizing what I need isn't even my strong suit. And I know I'm not alone in that. Many of us struggle to know and express our needs, which is why I love that Sasha pointed us to the truth in Hebrews 4:16, which is our verse for this episode. Hear it now in the CSB. Therefore, let us approach the throne of grace with boldness, so that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. As you listen to Sasha today, I hope you'll hear her encouragement to set boundaries for yourself in the areas you need to. And I also hope you hear the Holy Spirit reminding you that you can boldly ask God for what you need, whatever it is that you need, and His grace will shine light on your next steps. Let's listen in. Hello, Steady On community, and welcome into this podcast episode. I'm Angie Bauman, and with me today is Dr. Sasha Shillcutt. Sasha, welcome to the Steady On community. I'm sorry, Sasha Shillcutt, and yes, Steady On is a lot of S's.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and talk to you.
I am excited to have you, except for I will say that I'm a little bit hesitant about the conversation just because I already know it's going to step on my toes, because this is an issue that I deal with a lot in terms of how to use my time the best, but also how to not be tempted to sacrifice this precious resources for things that I know are not the best, right? Because of, outside like temptation or pressures or whatever. And so just as we get started, will you talk to us, just give us like a basic definition of boundaries. What is it that you are encouraging your reader to have? And why do you feel like we need to be brave to have them?
Great question. So boundaries really are how to live your priorities. That's how I see them. And it's a set of guidelines that each of us have that are really different for every person. And oftentimes they live in our head, but they don't actually make it out of our mouth, or they don't actually get expressed to others until someone violates our boundaries or crosses our boundaries, and we become frustrated. So boundaries are something that are very kind, they're safe, they're transparent, and they're really critical for your health and well-being, because not only do they instruct others how to treat you or how to speak to you, but they really tell you how to prioritize your time and where you put your energy. And you may have a set of priorities that you think, okay, I want to work for X amount of hours in the day, and I want to spend time with my family for this many hours, and I want to exercise, or whatever your priorities are. But the truth of the matter is that if you don't actually express those priorities in the context of boundaries, so I'm going to put boundaries around my time at work and how I work and who I work with. I'm going to put boundaries around my family and that time that I spend with them. I'm going to put boundaries around my own health and well-being. If you don't know what those are and you've never expressed them, you probably aren't living your priorities. No matter how much you wish you were, or you really want to, you're not living them. And so that's, to me, what a boundary is.
Will you say that again? Did you say if you don't express your boundaries, you're probably not living by your priorities? Is that what you said? That is a big statement. Yeah.
It is. It really, truly is. And I think that's where the courage comes in, because it really takes us in our world where we get a lot of kudos, and we get a lot of, like, our ego gets filled up when we please others and when we make others happy, or if we believe that that's what we're meant to do, that we're meant to make other people feel warm and fuzzy and happy and be servant leaders, and serve others. If we really truly think that that's what's going to make us likable, then setting a boundary seems opposite of how we want to be to people. and it seems mean, or it seems intrusive, or it seems too harsh, or it seems selfish. And so what happens is people cross our boundaries and we just kind of push it down, or we become passive aggressive, or we act out or project our anger that they've crossed a boundary, when in reality, we've never expressed what those actually are. And so that's why it takes courage. It takes courage to actually say, this is how I'm going to work at work. This is how I'm going to answer email. This is when I'm going to answer my phone. This is when I'm not going to answer my phone. This is time for me and my family, or this is time for my health. It takes courage. It takes a massive amount of courage in our world today to express those boundaries to the people that we do life with.
Why is it not selfish? Because I'm hanging on to that. What you said, there were several things, negative things that you said. It can seem like this, or this. And the one that stood out to me was it can seem selfish. And I think I resonate with that because it feels selfish when someone else wants something from us, or we know we could do something with someone else and we choose to say no. Why? How do we reframe that so maybe it doesn't feel selfish?
Well, I think I believe that all of us are put on this earth for a purpose, and we have a purpose. And that purpose, we have a purpose in our work. Our work may be raising little people. Our work may be, being a teacher during the day, or teaching others, or educating others, or nursing, or healthcare, or doing a podcast, or leading Bible studies, whatever it is. And not everyone has your passion or your purpose, because it's what is inside you. It's what God has placed in you. And if you go into your day thinking that I'm going to help this person that asks me, and this person that interrupts me, and I'm going to answer this phone call, and I'm going to check this inbox, and I'm going to say yes to this engagement and this engagement, there's no way that you are living your purpose. It's just impossible. And so what we forget is that we actually are on this earth to do things that are meaningful in life and meaningful to others. And if you're serving every person, you're not serving what it is that you are actually supposed to be doing. So it doesn't mean that you are being selfish when you say no, or when you set boundaries. You're actually being very intentional, and you're being focused in serving the people, or the persons, or whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing. And what we often don't realize is that if our own health and our own well-being and our own physical and mental health is in the gutter because we have neglected our own boundaries and our own health at the sacrifice of others, that's not godly. That's not healthy. That's not godly. That's not taking care of ourselves, and the body that we've been given, the mind that we've been given. And somehow especially in women, we have been conditioned to think that that's like being a martyr, or the martyr mom is being like an amazing, godly Christian woman that, everybody being, never having time for yourself. It almost becomes like a competition. And I see this all the time on social media and communities I lead, and the women I coach. I have to extract that false belief from them and say, actually, you're not doing anyone a service, especially the people you think you're serving, if you are not healthy yourself. And boundaries allow us to do that.
I'm thinking of the work of Brene Brown is dear to me. And she has a statement that has become really important to me where she says, clear is kind. I don't know if you're familiar with her work, or if and that's what as I'm listening to you talk, I keep thinking about that, because I adopted that sort of in my life a while ago, but it's something I have to go back to all the time because it's not my first instinct. Right. But I want to live that way. That is a priority for me, to be able to say what I know needs to be said in a loving way in order to move something forward. Because when I don't do it, I have this terrible temptation to sit in the lap of resentment, if you will, right? Like it builds in me. And then I'm like, and something happens between me and this other person. I'm like, actually, the conversation doesn't even have to be that hard. It just has to be clear. It just has to be communicated. And I hear that in what you're saying about boundaries. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think often, and I know you write about this, setting the boundaries or being clear about our boundaries, stating our boundaries is often hardest with the people that are closest to us. Would you talk about that just for a minute? Why is that so?
Yeah, I think that it's really easy to set boundaries with people that you are not
I don't
extremely
want to take that
close
call.
with. Yeah, or you don't like. Like, quite frankly, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't have a problem setting boundaries with those people. But it's the people that I don't want to disappoint, the people that I love, that are actually the hardest but most important boundaries to set. And oftentimes what we do is we expect our loved ones to know when we're tired, when we're exhausted, when we can't do one more thing, and just see that and just know not to ask us or not to expect us to do one more thing. But again, clear is kind, as Brene Brown has said. And I say boundaries are kind because they're so transparent. And so what we often have to realize is that, you may be exhausted, and maybe your partner or your child or your spouse or a friend says, hey, can you do this thing? And you just want to like blow up that they're even asking you. You may be thinking, can't they see how tired I am? Can't they see how exhausted I am? They don't love me because they're asking me to do this thing, and they should know that I don't have time or space for this. And we put unrealistic expectations on those people. And then we actually get really afraid to even speak up, because then we think, oh, we're going to let them down, or they're going to think we're weak, or they're going to be upset when I say I can't do this anymore. So I tell this funny story. I wrote about it in my first book about how I just decided that my time was going to have to be in the morning. I had 4 little kids, busy anesthesiologist, and I just decided I was going to have to go to bed an hour early because I was going to have to get up early in the morning and do me time. And so I just started going to bed early. And my husband was like, what are you doing? We have like the kitchen's a mess. This is when you normally clean up the kitchen and you go through the school papers and you do all the things. And I was like, oh, I don't do that anymore. And he's like, well, who's going to do it? And so, it took me a while when I first started setting boundaries I now don't do that. Like, if I know that I need time, or if I'm going to change my actual like work schedule or my life schedule, I have to involve him. I have to be brave enough to say, look, I don't want to do this thing that I'm doing anymore. I'm going to hire somebody to come in the morning and pack the kids' lunches and clean up the kitchen for an hour, and hire the neighbor girl to come over so that I can work out in the morning, so that I don't have to do this at night. I have to go to bed earlier. So I really need that time. Are you okay with that? I know you care about my wellness. My husband would have said, sure, but that's not what I did. I just said, I'm going to bed.
I'm done.
And so I think sometimes we avoid setting boundaries. I coach a lot of women who are afraid to ask for help, and they're afraid to ask for help to the person they've been living with for 20 years. And I'm like, why? And they're like, well, or they're afraid to say, I don't want to go on that vacation. I want to just have a weekend by myself, or I don't want to go do this thing. I just really need time alone. And I think sometimes we underestimate the ability of our partners and our family to appreciate our boundaries. Because when you are a boundaried person who's brave enough to speak your boundaries to others, what you do is you say, it's okay to share your boundaries with me. So then my husband would start saying, well, I'm glad that you told me that, because I actually really need to carve out time for myself at this time. Can we make that happen? Of course we can. So this is why it's so important to just be transparent and clear, but also realize it may be hardest to set boundaries with people that are closest to you.
Hey, friend, I'm cutting in to say thank you. If you're listening to this episode when it first releases, we're about to celebrate Christmas and the beginning of a new year. And this year has been one of growth for me as an individual through the grace of God. And I want to take a moment to acknowledge and give thanks for the way He continues to pursue me and invite me to trust Him more completely. This year has also been a year of growth for the Steady On ministry, and I thank God for His calling on my life, but I also want to thank you, my friend, because ministry growth happens when people receive what is being offered. You continue to listen and show up and reach out to let me know how the ministry is impacting your walk with Jesus. You are the reason we are here, and I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I also want to let you know that beginning in January, the Steady On podcast is moving to 2 episodes each week. On Mondays, we will have a Take It In episode that uses the step-by-step Bible study method to unpack our verse for the week. Many of these episodes will be solo, And sometimes my brilliant Bible Talk co-host, Susie Crosby, will be with me. Then Wednesdays will continue with this format and we will live it out. We will hear testimony and teaching from fabulous guests who help point us to the faithfulness of God. So Mondays will help us take in the promises of God. Wednesdays will help us live out the promises of God. And I cannot wait to get started. From my home to yours, I wish you a very Merry Christmas. May the hope of the Christ child fill your heart with the joy that comes from knowing you are loved beyond measure by the one who was, who is, and who always will be. And now, back to the show. I'm wondering, I'm thinking about this for myself. I'm wondering about it for you. I wonder if the listener might be thinking, how do we identify? This isn't something I posed to you ahead of time, but how do we know that a boundary is needed, or that maybe we're not respecting our own boundaries, but we really haven't even identified them? Do you know the question I'm kind of asking?
Yes.
Like, what's going on there?
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So great question. And I talk about this in the book. I have you do what's called a boundary inventory. And I have you start with your biggest pain point in life. It might be a person, it might be a project, it might be negative self-talk or something about yourself that you're really struggling with, that shame element. Almost always our biggest pain point in life or our biggest problem with ourselves lacks boundaries. I bet you 99% of the time, it's either boundaries in the way that you are with you. So for example, one of my biggest struggles is I am a person who jumps out of bed and wants to tackle the day and to-do list. I'm a morning person. And it doesn't matter that I've been doing this work on myself for 8 years now. Every morning I jump out of bed and I have to physically tell myself, literally in my brain, say, don't pick up your phone. Don't look at your computer. Don't pick up your phone. Go brush your teeth, put on your walking shoes, go exercise. Because that's not how Sasha works in the morning. Like I jump up and I go, oh my gosh, I have this to do today, this to do today, and then I have to do this, and then I have to do this. I don't have time to exercise. I better just start get to work, right? So I have to set a boundary with myself. And I have set this boundary for years and I still have to set it every morning. It's like automation. Don't do those things. You have to exercise and spend time with God first thing in the morning, or else the rest of your day, you will not be honoring your boundaries. So what I tell people is start with your pain point, because for years, my pain point was exhaustion, overwhelm, and burnout. And I would start my morning working and I would end it working at night. And it led me to a place of disaster in my life. So I know this about myself and I have a really strong boundary. So if people, if that little voice in my head that comes every morning when my alarm clock goes off that says, you don't have to exercise today. You don't have to spend time doing that today. Just get up and start your to-do list. The more you get done, the better you'll feel. Nope. So I have people go through an inventory, because oftentimes you don't realize, like, maybe it's a person in your life, at your job or in your family, that is causing you massive anxiety and stress or conflict. You don't have boundaries. You don't have boundaries around that person, the way you communicate, around the work, the project, whatever it is. And so I take you through those steps in the book.
I love that. I love that. I know that you say in order to set time boundaries, especially, there are two main things that we need to possess: the awareness that we're just talking about, that a boundary is needed. So there's one thing. And so you're helping us do that, but also the energy to enforce it. And I hear what you were just saying, and I think others can relate. Like, I'm coming at this maybe from a place of overwhelm. I'm coming at this from a place of burnout and exhaustion. And so it feels overwhelming, right? To begin to say, how do I even unpack this enough where I can identify it and teach it to myself, if you will? Because I think it's like a behavior change, right? That we have to teach ourselves, but then also communicate it to other people. And so what are some steps if someone's like, wow, this feels like this would need a huge shift in my life? What are some steps to break that down a little bit? Where would we start?
Well, first, anybody can do this. You don't have to have a specific personality or strength, or, some people say, well, it's easy for you because you're more extroverted. No, it's actually, it's anyone can set a boundary. So,
or not, I would argue, right?
Right. Exactly. So I always say when people come to me, and I just had actually a partner come to me today, totally overwhelmed, burned out, no boundaries, no work-life boundaries, wanting to quit. And I said, well, the first thing you got to do is take time off. And this person everybody always looks at me and says, that's like the opposite of what I can do.
That.
I can't do that. Anyone can if you cannot give yourself 15 minutes to 30 minutes a day, and I say this very honestly, you are on a path of death. You will not be living long on this earth. If you do not have 15 to 30 minutes of your life to give to yourself a day, you literally will die early. And as a physician, I can tell you that's true.
Yeah.
And so ask yourself that question, like, what would it look like for me to give myself 15 minutes without distractions in a closed room? Like, sometimes I tell women, go to your pantry or your closet or wherever you can get away from all the people and shut the door. And a lot of people don't want to start out with time alone, a day off. Like, this is what I told this person today. It's pretty drastic, but you need an immediate day off where you are off the grid, not changing your oil, not being at home with your kids, not on the computer, like off the grid. It's scary because what happens in those moments is not our life is fixed in a day, but we get clarity. We get clarity where the problems are.
Where the problem is, yeah.
Where the vines are coming in and trying to pull down the plant, right? Like, you literally can start to see the weeds if you give yourself space. But it always gets worse before it gets better, because when you see all the weeds that you've let encroach because you have no fence, you have no boundaries around your growing plant, it's kind of depressing at first, and you might feel shame or even feel more overwhelmed, like, oh my gosh, how am I going to extract all these weeds and put up the fence posts that I need to protect the growth? How do I do that? You can do it. And you can just start with 15 to 30 minutes a day. That's what I did. I would get up in the morning and I would literally just sit at the kitchen table. Sometimes I would just weep for 15 minutes and go, okay, what do I need to say no to today? What do I need to remove from my calendar that's on the calendar for the next year that I physically and emotionally cannot show up for? What person is exhausting me right now? Emotionally exhausting, that because, and this is key, I'm trying to care for them instead of care about them. Who do I need to have a really crucial conversation with? And it doesn't have to be all of those things in one day, but that's what happens when we start spending time alone, is that we get clarity and we go, oh, I don't have to live the way I've been living. I can start setting small boundaries and giving myself breathing room to find that balance and that wellness again.
Yeah. And I think when we go through a process, this has been true for me anyway, like that, where we begin with those small things. It's sort of like when we begin to do a little bit of like work in our house, right? Like, you do a little something in one room and then you look at that room and another little something would be good. And then you're like, it's kind of contagious, where maybe the next room would be, if I did just this or that, but I think that the same can be true in our soul when when you start clearing those weeds in one area and you make one right decision about, like, I am not going to deal with that person today, or I'm actually going to say, even though I said yes, oh, this is really hard for me, but even though I said yes to that, there is time enough for someone else to be found to do it. And today I'm going to say, I actually needed to have said no, or whatever, one hard thing, if you will. But that begins to grow. And I think there's a sense of like peace that comes, contentment that comes, and also like confidence. Actually, I'm in charge of my life. Not I'm at the mercy of my life.
Right.
Sort of.
Right.
Yeah.
And when you start to do it, you empower others you give permission to others to do the same. And at first people may be a little surprised. I had a no list when I started doing this, and I actually did it for myself. I started writing all the things I was removing and all of the things I was saying no to, because I was so afraid to do it that I really needed to see that I did it. Okay, I did it, And so I had a list, and at first people didn't believe me. They were like, wait, what? You're saying no to that? Or, oh, you're being funny. I was like, this is really bad. When I say no and nobody believes it, that tells you how little boundaries I had. And so whatever you have to do to just gain the confidence to see, like I put it up on my little whiteboard so I could see like, oh, I did that and I survived and that person still talks to me or they still like me or I'm not a horrible person, and it really does allow you to gain transparency of who you are, and other people know who you are. Like now people know at night I don't answer my phone when I'm not in the hospital. I used to answer it all the time and I don't now. Like, so nobody calls me unless it's like a 911,
Right.
So people will respect your boundaries once they learn them, but you have to express them to people.
Let me ask a follow-up question to that, because we've talked a lot about being able to say no to things that like deplete us or are too much or negative or something. But what about the really hard thing where sometimes we need to say no to something we want to say yes to? Would you speak to that just for a moment? I'm sure you have some of those in your life too.
Oh, definitely. I think, you want to get to a place, it's a good place to be, I always
Yeah.
say, in your career when you are saying no to things that you actually would love to do. It's a beautiful place to be because it means that the opportunities coming at you match what you actually, your passion. But there's a reason why the sun sets every night and that we go to bed. And it's because if we stayed awake, we would all end up in a a manic state of depletion and be dead in a week. So, there's a pattern to our circadian rhythm. And isn't it interesting that we all quit every day? We all get in bed and go to bed and we quit. And we have to quit. We have to stop doing what we might love doing, whatever we're doing that night, to go to bed to do it again the next day. And I think that's so symbolic. I always tell myself that, like, it's time to just, enough is enough. And when you have something that you really want to do, there's two things that I always say. Number one, I never fill my calendar because I know that something may come up that I really want to do, that I want to squeeze in. And if I fill up every weekend or every night of the week and I don't have any space open, I won't get to do that really cool thing. So number one, you have to say no to some things that are good opportunities, because what if a really fantastic opportunity comes around and you're all booked up? And then the second thing is, when you say no to good things, people will ask you again. So this is a very common limiting belief, especially women. Women have this because we are often not at the table as much as men in the corporate world or in the world of opportunities. And we have this thing like, if we get asked to do something, we can't say no because they won't ask us again. And that's really untrue. So a lot of times if it's something that I really want to do, but I just can't make it work because I know that it will burn me out, I will say, please remember me for next year or for next month or whatever. I'm going to put this on my calendar and I will save a spot for this next year. And people almost always remember that and they'll come circle back around, or you can email that person, a few months before and say, just remember, I would love to be involved in this. And they're more than happy to put you on deck for the next time.
I love those tips. Thank you, Sasha, for those really practical tips with that. So tell me, as you're doing this work, I know that you are a woman of faith. How does faith play into this? And do you have maybe any kind of Bible scriptures, verses, passages that are important to you as you think about living this out? Because as you said, you're not perfect at it yet. So what keeps you encouraged? I mean, I
Yeah.
appreciate you saying that, what keeps you encouraged to press on and keep learning about this?
So one of my favorite scriptures that I live by all the time, because I'm a very I'm a very bold woman, and sometimes I think that it's hard to be a woman who may look very differently than maybe what your mom was or what your sister is. And I'm just someone who, if I want to say something, I just say it, good or bad. Sometimes it gets me in trouble. But my favorite scripture is Hebrew 4:16. Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in the time of need. Because what this is basically saying is, boundaries are in our time of need. Like when we're setting boundaries, it's because we need to set them. We probably don't want to be setting them, but we actually need to set them. And he says, go boldly, don't be timid in whatever you need to ask for, whether that's asking another person for help, another sister for help, your spouse for help, Or if it's just saying, you know what, I can't do this. I need to set a boundary around this. I'm struggling for my own health and wellness. I really need to pull back from this. And I'm asking you to respect that boundary. That's being bold. Like there's really not much more courage than to ask for help in our time of need. And I love that scripture because it's very affirming to me as a woman that I can boldly do that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that, I think there's this sense in all of that, and it hit me as you were talking just now, that we it's good to believe that we're worth what it takes to set like we're worth it. Like I don't like to use the word deserve, maybe because of our culture and fear and all that, but like we are worthy of the time and energy that it takes to understand what's not working for us and make a new way so that it works better for us. I think that's so true and hard to believe, especially when we're dealing with overwhelm and exhaustion and burnout and all the things that come from not doing this. Yeah.
Yes.
This has been fantastic. Very convicting and encouraging for me at the same time. And I really appreciate it because I think that's really good. I think it has helped me see some ways that I personally have had a lot of growth in this area, but also invites me to keep considering it because it's a worthy journey for sure. So I'm just wondering, before I let you go, I always ask this of my guests because I love to share resources. Is there anything at all right now, even though you're sort of in the middle of a book launch and you're very busy and all of these things, but is there anything at all that you are reading or watching or listening to, anything that you're studying that is keeping you connected to God, bringing you joy right now? What's going on? Let us see just a little sliver of your life.
Yes, I have to be very honest. I'm not a television watcher, so I am totally out of the loop, but I do listen to music and I love to walk, and I do a walk every morning, a nature power walk every morning to get myself in the right headset. And I am obsessed with Maverick City music. I love their worship. I listen to it 24/7, every single song on repeat. So my favorite thing just to get connected to God is just to walk and talk to him as I'm listening to praise and worship.
I love that. I love that too. We live in a university town. My listeners know this. We live in a university town and our campus lake is about 2.2 miles. And I walk it a couple of times a week and I listen to praise music also as I walk it because there's just something about. And every once in a while, you need to get up from this desk and you need to get your feet moving. I go to the gym in the morning so I have that regular routine, but there's something different when I walk over there. It's not actually for exercise for me. It's more for
all
just
mental, isn't it? It's just there. Yes,
yeah.
It's so good for you. Yeah. And I tell everyone that is stressed, just go on a 10-minute walk. Sometimes honestly, when I get home at the end of the day, I have so much stress and tension in my head from the day at work. And I don't want to bring it into my littles. And so I just will walk our lane. And my kids will say, oh, mom's outside walking the lane. She's going to be in a minute. But I just have to get it out, out of my body and out of my head.
I think that's so beautiful, though, because it does, it communicates this self-awareness of I'm not quite where I need to be in order to be present with you. And so give me just a minute, right? Like to kind of transition from where I've been to where I want to be instead of just coming in the house and unloading. And I think that's a gift, actually. Yeah. And something they can stand at the door and laugh at you because mom's not quite there. Mom, she's coming. One more.
Yeah, exactly.
Sasha, I heard you call yourself. I incorrectly called you Sasha when we began.
Oh, it's okay.
No, I should have asked, but I thought it was easy, but it wasn't easy. But Sasha, and it has been a delight to talk to you, and I am so grateful that you have spent this time with us. And all the best with this book launch. Sasha can be found at becomingbraveenough.com. Her podcast is called The Brave Enough Show. Her new book is Brave Boundaries, Strategies to Say No, Stand Strong, and Take Control of Your Time. And all of that and more places that you can find and follow her are in today's show notes. And we're just so grateful that you've been here. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you, friend, for listening. Until next time, peace. Thank you, Sasha, for sharing your confidence with us today, that it is good and it is right and necessary for us to know what we need and then make adjustments in our life so we are asking for what we need and living by our priorities. Hebrews 4:16 again, this time from The Voice. So let us step boldly to the throne of grace where we can find mercy and grace to help when we need it the most. Next week, I will welcome Maria Morris to the show. Maria is the owner of Carabelle's Eat and Treats, a bakery and catering service in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She employs and trains women coming out of incarceration in the culinary field, and Maria will be with us to talk about the importance of second chances. And don't miss the Bible Talk episode that drops this Friday, December 16th. My dear, dear friend and co-host Susie Crosby will be with me once more to provide insights into our Hebrews 4:16 verse from this week. I absolutely adore Susie, and I look forward to sharing her with you again. If you haven't yet, I'd be so grateful if you would follow the podcast on whatever directory you're using to listen. It only takes a second, and it guarantees you'll see new episodes as soon as they drop. Thank you so much for listening. I pray wherever your day takes you, you're walking in the confident knowledge that you are a beloved, cherished child of God. Peace.